Hello everyone, and lovely to be here. I don't want to be in between you and the next session, so I'll try and keep it brief. I've got about 20 minutes. I'll try and wrap this up in 15 and leave some time for Q&A. But let's do a show of hands. How many of you know at least one person who's competent, knowledgeable, but they're not able to perform to their potential because they struggle to communicate? Could I see some hands there? Okay, that's quite a few. So that is what we call as the cost of poor communication. And it's a dual cost. So for an individual, there is a human cost attached to it because there are unrealized dreams, that potential goes wasted. But on the other hand, there is a business cost attached to it. Our study shows that in India, we incur almost 2.5 lakh rupees per person per year as a cost of poor communication. A similar study done by Grammarly in the US suggests that in the US they lose about $12,500 per annum per person because of poor communication, and this cost has gone up almost 5 to 6x over the last 3-4 years, of course fueled by remote communication, distributed teams, all of that, but also the fact that now more people are coming to the front. So you're no more just somebody who goes to a plant, interacts with 5 people around you, and you are done. You have auditors coming, you have dignitaries coming, and anybody needs to now go out and present their ideas. So let me just talk a little bit about what is communication fitness. So just like in sports, your fitness affects your performance. Cricketers have to go through yo-yo test, and if they don't qualify, they don't get selected. So for a working professional also, their communication fitness impacts their job performance. It could be something as simple as the inability to convey what you want to say. It could be something as complex as being on a platform like this and influence the audience, change the way they think. So it's a wide range of needs. Just like I also need to be fitter, I need to be a lot fitter than I am, and even Virat Kohli needs to be fitter to do better in his next match. So fitness is something which is not relevant for just a set of people. It varies across the spectrum. So what we are going to share today, just wanted to sort of talk about the data points that we have used. So we have been recording individuals as a part of communication exercise and then analyzing that data. So the recording is converted into text, and then the text is analyzed where we look for patterns in communication behaviors. So we have done this with 87 different organizations. These are banks, these are pharma companies, these are manufacturing organizations. So a wide spectrum of organizations, and also across the hierarchy. So right from people who are at entry level working on the shop floor, or field sales people, all the way up to CXOs. So the analysis runs into more than 12 million sentences that we have evaluated to look for the patterns. There are 4 major areas where communication affects a working professional. So the most important one that we hear is that it affects their confidence. Because you don't feel confident about sharing your thoughts, you do not participate. So you might have great ideas, you might have the solution, but you tend to hold back, and that causes a severe damage both to the individual and the organization. Then there is the ability to connect with people. I cannot think of any job role where you don't have to persuade someone, where you do not enter into some kind of a negotiation, where you do not have to diffuse some kind of a conflict. And in all these situations, if we are not able to connect with the other person, it becomes very difficult to pull it off. The third area that we saw was about credibility. Imagine if you are a consultant and you are presenting a solution to the client, but you don't sound very confident about it. It affects your overall credibility. So just because you are avoiding eye contact, or you're flitting between one point and another, even though you have the solution, it becomes difficult for the other person to accept. And I think the most common one is clarity, because if we can't understand each other, the conversation doesn't go through. And there are different ways in which it leads to business cost. It could be about efficiency loss. If I had $1 every time I heard that this team member is technically very strong, but they cannot communicate, so their managers have to go into the meeting, that's not the most optimal way of conducting work. So there's an efficiency loss. There are times when individuals have to review a lot of documents before an RFP is sent or before an audit report is sent. So these are the ways in which efficiency loss can happen. It also leads to weak workforce collaboration. Many a times when we go and review why teams could not work with each other, communication comes out as one of the major reasons where it affects. So what we have been doing is not just to see how communication is impacting, but also check what kind of business metrics we can track where the impact of communication is seen, because that's how you will be really able to put a dollar value to poor communication. So these are some of the examples. Say in pharma sales, we have seen that the time spent in clinic with a doctor, we see that it increases, because if you're not able to make an impression, the doctors want to get rid of you very, very fast. So in clinic time is something which is critical. Or in pharma manufacturing, audit is an example. When you have USFDA auditors, they're not able to understand you. The audit cycles stretch a lot. There are observations that come in primarily because of that. So in FMCG, it could be about deal closure, it could be contract wins. In customer experience, it could be about how many first-time resolutions, so is there a rise in that? Consulting, we have seen a drop in unbilled hours when people start communicating more effectively. So there are multiple metrics that we can keep tracking. But that's the problem side of it. How do we address that? So we have appropriated 2 frameworks that I wanted to share with you. These are not our frameworks. We just took it and sort of applied it in the context of communication learning. The first one is called Jobs to be Done. It's a framework by Clayton Christensen. If you have not read this book called Competing Against Luck, I would strongly advise doing that. So Christensen says that imagine whatever product or service you're using, it's a human being and you're hiring them to do the job. So the first question we ask is, what job is communication doing for you? So is communication helping you relay better instructions? Is it helping you persuade someone? Is communication helping you pitch an idea? So when we are able to help people identify exactly what job communication is doing for them, then the learning becomes more focused. And then once that has happened, the next framework that we use, it's called Better, Faster, More. So they say that imagine if you start relaying better instructions, what are a few things that you can do better? What are a few things you can do faster? What are a few things you can do more? So if you are a medical rep, the job that communication is doing for you is to engage with an HCP better, with a doctor better. So if you are engaging better with them, how will you measure the impact? So you see that you start spending more time with the doctor. So your engagement levels go up, your prescription per doctor ratios could go up. So if we start asking better, faster, more, we would be able to come up with more meaningful metrics to understand that if individuals are not improving, where is it that it has an impact. So yeah, that's pretty much about it. I'll pause over here. Happy to address any questions that you have. So yes, we have someone at the back.
Hello. Hi, Ashish.
Yes.
Thank you for your wonderful, I think very brief, pitch about your company. My name is Aubrey Aloysius. I'm the co-founder of a music tech company called LorraineMusic.ai.
Hello, Aubrey.
And hi. And I'd really love to know, how do you use technology? How does Vani Coach use technology? How exactly?
Right. So the way we use, so if we think about communication coaching, there are 2 very important aspects. Each individual is different. So we may all be using the same persuasion framework, but the way we contextualize it is very, very different. And that's where a personal coach plays a very important role. A coach allows you to reflect, a coach allows you to identify your patterns in behavior that you need to shift. Now the same thing can be done to a large extent by technology. So what we do is, we've built a large language model, and we train that using vast amounts of industry data. So when someone is practicing a communication scenario, what tech does is it converts it into data points, starts looking for patterns, and then shares that pattern with a human coach. So it becomes like a teacher's assistant for a coach, so that one coach can manage more number of people. So tech keeps doing the job at the back end to feed that. So that's the model that we have been using to help more people have access to personalized coaching. Yep. Yes.
Yeah, hi Ashish.
Hi.
So how you analyze the like ROI at a senior level positions, like when it comes to sales front, you can say like, okay, this is my ROI on a dollar level. But when it comes to leadership position, it's very difficult to measure the ROI in the short term.
Right.
So how long it takes and how you measure the ROI on that?
That's a very interesting question, and I wish I had a very, very concrete answer, because all said, there is always a certain level of subjectivity involved in that. One of the things that we do is we start asking, why do you need to do it in the first place? So if you are a leader, let's say if you are a partner with a big four firm in strategy, and you engage with clients all around. So why do you want to do it? What are the problems that you're facing? So when we evaluate the problem statements, we start breaking it down in terms of different behaviors. So it could be about how they are able to inspire their team members, or it could be about how they are able to, are they trusted advisors for their clients? And in that, then we start further breaking it down into very granular level of behaviors. And then what you do is you ask that if you change this behavior in real life, what shift will happen, right? So will you be able to, let's say, improve your employee NPS? Is that a way in which it can be measured? Or will it help execute a strategy faster that you want to do for your organization? So these are more indicative metrics where you can evaluate, but to be very honest, it's not something where you can 100% measure each and every point. So good question. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. Ashish, so how do you link this with coaching specifically around at leadership levels? Things like executive presence, and where you link it for public speaking and some of those aspects,
Right.
then generic coaching.
This is something which is very specific to communication coaching. It, like you said, executive presence could be one, being on the stage could be another, but it also has behavioral elements of communication. For example, if you have teammates who don't get along, how do you foster that culture in the organization so that they work with each other? So each of these becomes specific pain points, and that's what you start codifying, right? So if it is executive presence, where is the lack of executive presence felt, right? And if it is lacking, where is the damage? So why do you need to fix it in the first place, right? So when you start analyzing that's where it becomes more of an actionable approach to coach. So in strict sense, it's not coaching, it's a blend of coaching, guiding, tutoring. So we've sort of used it as an all-encompassing term.
Hi Ashish, I'm
Hello.
Abha Nanda, and I'm into business coaching. And my question is that we have talked about how the data is collated, but that leads to generalization. And of course, when we are talking about, giving group coaching, we are specifically, targeting some technical skills. For that, this information looks really reliable. But from the behavioral aspect, it does not really, will it really be helpful in that sense?
Yes, it is.
You did mention about behavioral skills,
Yes.
yeah. But
Yes.
from the technical viewpoint, yes, we can collate that data and,
Right.
try and bring the reformation that we're looking
Right.
for.
Right.
Or the transformation. But from the behavioral aspect, because since I'm a business coach and I would like to take advantage of this, so if you could just throw some light on this.
Sure.
Thank you.
So now you can actually codify behavioral data as well and analyze that. So that's absolutely possible. Let me use an example. Let's say you are a consulting manager and you work with client stakeholders, and your primary need to improve is that how do you handle better, so how do you handle stakeholder conversations better, how do you persuade them to run faster sprints, and all of these cases. So a large part of it is behavioral. Now what we do is, and the volume of data is an important thing. So if I only record a 15-minute clip, then of course the data is not statistically significant to derive any actionable insight from that. But if I record, let's say, a 4-hour conversation over a period of time, then a larger pattern starts emerging. So in one of the cases we saw that a whole group of people, while individual challenges, the primary cause they were not able to persuade effectively because they would end up using a lot of I, me, myself in the conversation, or they would end up using a lot of no, but, however in the conversation, and that's where the connection would break. Whereas when you compare it with a benchmark, so that's also important. So when you are doing it for behavioral coaching, it's important to have some benchmark data. So let's say you record 50 people who are great at persuasion, and then you convert that into data points. So what large language models do is they don't understand language. So that's ironical because it's called a language model. What it does, it converts text into math. So those words, it could be either you encode a whole word or you encode a part of it, like what ChatGPT does, it's called tokenization. So when you start encoding it, it starts looking for patterns in that data, right? Say if you go to a new city and you see that first signal, there are people jumping the signal. Now that's not statistically enough data to say that people in this city jump traffic signals all the time. But when you have done that for say 50 different signals and you see that common behavior, now you have arrived at an inference. So even for behavioral communication, it's now absolutely possible to codify the behavior, look for patterns, and help them correct that particular pattern in behavior. Okay.
We'll take one last question.
Sure.
So Ashish, you were talking about the silent cost of communication.
Yes.
So just a thought was coming to my mind, the three factors. One was the behavioral issue, or it is a skill set issue, or it is a cultural aspect of the organization. Absolutely. Which is issue. I want to, among the three factors, which is more prominent and which is more difficult to fix it.
Well, to answer the first part of your question, it's absolutely a mix of all three. While for different personas it might differ. So when you are working with people who are more from technical or say finance or these backgrounds, relatively junior in the organization, their skill issue is more important, primarily because their education didn't afford them to acquire these skills early. Whereas as people start growing, and in India, in many organizations, your growth is dependent on your techno-functional ability. But as you move to more managerial roles, the paradigm shifts. So now you need to communicate in a way where behavior becomes important. So in those cases, you see that behavioral communication plays a more important role than skills. So it's a mix, it depends on which crowd that we are addressing. So that's the first part. The second part, the most difficult problem to fix without doubt is cultural. Because if in an organization, the culture doesn't acknowledge that communication is something which needs to be fixed, if that is not as a part of the org culture, then it is always going to be extremely difficult to address. Sure, I'm happy till such time we have, I think we have about a minute
yes,
remaining.
Yes, please, go ahead.
Sure. So I'll repeat the question for the benefit of the rest of the people. I'm not sure if everybody could hear it. If it's a cultural issue, does it flow only top down? In our experience, no. Herzberg says that culture is a learned behavior. It's a learned behavior of how we think, feel, and act. So it could absolutely be a very localized thing also. It could also be about how it is influenced by people around you. In many organizations, especially say plants, those are in remote areas, or sales organizations, those are widespread. We see that there is a lot of drive from the top of the organization to address it, but somehow it doesn't percolate. So I wouldn't say that it's always top down. It could as much be a local culture issue. It could as much be a legacy. Sometimes it could be a 5-year-old problem which still exists, whereas the top down view might have changed. So there's no one pattern that we have seen, right? All right, I think the time's up. Thank you so much, all of you. You're a very patient audience. Thanks a lot.